Hi, Shannon here, your friendly neighborhood hostess for Let's Talk to Animals, the podcast all species can enjoy together. So excited to welcome you. And I thought I would continue in the vein we started with 2 weeks ago, answering some more frequently asked questions about pet reincarnation, the joyful reunion of welcoming your soul, pet, and spirit back into a new body, so you can share a whole new set of adventures together. It's happened to me 4 times in this lifetime with a single animal, and that would be my sleepy little parrot here, my baby parrot of almost 2 years, huh? Miss Petal. And it's happened to me with, in a most unexpected way, with my beloved rescued box turtle, Bruce, who came back to me through my 3-year-old box turtle, Io. And so in this episode, I want to build on what we started 2 weeks ago, talking about some of the particulars about what to expect. What is pet reincarnation really like? How can it happen? And how will your pet and spirit let you know that they are planning or that they want to or that they're willing to come back to reincarnate back to you in a new body? And so if you're new to this whole subject, you're new to Let's Talk to Animals, you're new to me, you're new to animal communication, I highly encourage you to go back and listen first to the episode I recorded 2 weeks ago and get your feet underneath you. Get an understanding of what am I talking about when I say pet reincarnation? What does that look like? And why would an animal want to do that? And we cover all of those questions in that episode. In this episode, what I want to talk to you about is some of the ways that your pet can let you know. How will an animal let their human know? Yes, I want to come back. I shared in the last episode that this is not a linear process. It's not particularly a logical or an analytical process. It's not like getting Siri going on your smartphone or pulling up MapQuest or getting a set of old school printed directions saying at the fork, go right, and then you see the tree and you take a left, and then there's a gas station and you go straight, et cetera, et cetera. It's not necessarily like that. However, it can feel like that for somebody who is awake to their intuition, who is awakening their intuitive self. And that is a huge part of the process and the animal's motivation for saying yes. And so you can listen back to that first episode and get a sense of some of the reasons and the motivations, what it might look like to say yes to a joyful reunion, to start that process, what it might feel like as you're going through it, and the end result of waking up your own intuition and some of the benefits, not just with you and your animal coming back together, but the benefits, the ripple effect in your whole life when you say yes to waking up as an intuitive embodied soul and learning to use what I call your IOS, your intuitive operating system, which is something that I cover extensively with my animal communication students inside of Animal Communication Adventure, which is my signature learning program. And if you're interested in that, you can reach out to me, let me know, drop a comment, or just head over to animallovelanguages.com/enroll, and you'll see all the options there. So for this episode, let's start to break it down a little bit. What are some of the ways that your animal might let you know that they are willing or wanting or ready or intending on returning to you in a new body? And to do this, I'm going to share some stories. And the first one happened long before I had even an inkling, before animal communication was even a gleam in my eye. I had no idea that I was intuitive. I had no idea that I was sensitive to animal energy. I had zero concept of myself as an animal communicator. I was hiring animal communicators, but I was not an animal communicator and did not think that I had that ability. And what happened was my mom lost her soul dog J.P. Morgan. J.P. Morgan passed into spirit, and my mom and my dad went into a funk. It's hard. Suddenly we wake up and everything is different, and we are different. It's very jarring, especially if we're not really tuned in to what's going on and why it feels so jarring. And so, if that is you, I want to just stop for just a moment as a little PS and say, head over to my website, click on resources. That's animallovelanguages.com. Click on resources, or you can type in animallovelanguages.com/free tools and click on pet parent grief support guide. It's a little square icon, and you can download a resource to help you walk through that firestorm of grief that inevitably unfolds, no matter how ready you think you are, no matter how grateful you feel that your animal maybe is no longer in pain, they're no longer suffering, they're no longer struggling with loss of quality of life. The firestorm remains. It's one part physical, one part chemical, one part emotional, one part mental, one part relational, one part soul level. And so that guide will help you as you're moving through this process, and know that you are not alone. It will also link you up with some grief support resources that are specifically geared towards pet parents and that are all free. If you need some extra support, and of course, if you want to reach out to me, you can just hit that green schedule button or hit the connect page and see what your options are, and we can have a session with your transitioned animal, with your soul, pet, and spirit, and help you reconnect. Going back to our story, what happened was JP Morgan transitioned, and it was an assisted transition. So it was an in-vet clinic euthanasia. And I witnessed my parents, especially my dad, really dip down into a depression, especially my dad. He was really struggling, and I really wanted to help, of course. I've always been a vivid dreamer. I didn't really know what to do per se, but I've always had vivid dreams. And I did not yet realize that I have psychic dreams and mediumship dreams. And I went to sleep one night a couple months after JP transitioned, and I had a dream. And JP Morgan was in the dream, and he was an elder like he had been before he transitioned. And in the dream, there was this puppy with a very unusual color. He had the brown and the black fur that JP Morgan had, but he had this signature white streak down the front of him. And he was a wire-haired dachshund. JP Morgan had been smooth, and he was a wire-haired dachshund, so more of this scruffy, mid-length hair. And he had this white splash of color right down the front of him. And I woke up from that dream, as unknowing as I was of my own intuitive awakening that was starting to take place. I still just knew I had seen my parents' next dog. So that dream gave me some clues. I knew that they would be adopting a puppy. I knew that this puppy would be wire-haired. I knew that there was a connection to JP Morgan. And I knew that this puppy was going to have a very unique coloration. I also knew that this puppy would be a boy. So I got this nice little packet of clues in this dream. Again, didn't really know what to do with it. So I went online. I went on Craigslist of all places, because this was back in the day, and that was still the place to go to find out what was going on locally with pets and apartments and all kinds of different stuff. And I found this puppy on Craigslist that seemed to tick all the boxes and definitely looked like this little puppy I'd seen in a dream. So I old school printed off the photo of the puppy, and I head over to my parents and I say, I think this puppy is the one that you're looking for. Well, my mom and dad had news for me too, because unbeknownst to me, they had reached out to JP Morgan's breeder. My dad had a real love for wire-haired dachshunds. They're not easy to find. They knew of this one breeder that they had worked with to find JP Morgan. Well, it turns out the breeder just had puppies. All of the puppies were placed except for one. The puppy was a boy, He was a true wire haired, not like JP, who came out smooth for some reason, but he was a true wire haired. And he had a splash of white all the way down the front of his chest. Well, by that weekend, we were in the car driving the 3 hours to go and visit the breeder and meet this puppy. And that turned out to be Flash. And Flash is now 9.5. And so the rest is history, as they say. But I didn't know. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't understand. I'd never heard the term pet reincarnation. I certainly had no idea that I was an animal sensitive and intuitive at that time. I just knew I was a vivid dreamer. And I knew that something about this whole packet of clues was very intriguing to me. So I had at least enough courage to share my dream with mom and dad. And come to find out, not only did they not think it was weird, but they already had a whole plan in place to meet this puppy who perfectly matched up to the description. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, well, there's no way that I could ever call my pet back, just know you don't necessarily have to be intuitive for it to happen. Of course, you can always work with me. That's one of the things I do each week is I work with pet parent clients who want to call their soul pets back. I have a whole process that I use. And you can also, when you're over on that free tools page on my website, you might also want to request the pet parent pet reincarnation guide, joyful reunions guide, because that will walk you through some of the basics as well. And then you can schedule your session and we can talk with your pet. But just know that in many cases, part of the big motivation for a soul pet to say yes, aside from the glorious opportunity to spend another lifetime with you, have another set of fresh adventures, be unconditionally loved, pampered, and spoiled, another big motivation is to serve their soul mission as your partner, empathic friend, and teacher. That's what pet means to the animals who have taken on incarnations where they live in close company with us. There are pets, empathic friends, and teachers. And the opportunity to help us wake up to our intuition, to help us discover how to live life from the inside out and to really truly raise the vibration of the planet, that's its own motivation. And so if you're thinking to yourself, well, I'm not really intuitive, or I don't even think I really have time to develop these skills, you just have to be open. And the time that you need is the time that you already have. It's just about little tweaks and little shifts. And again, I talk a lot more about that inside of Animal Communication Adventure if you're interested, but you can also get great life experience just scheduling a session, just reading the Pet Reincarnation Joyful Reunions Guide, learning a little bit more about the process, listening to these podcast episodes. I've recorded several episodes now that focus specifically on pet reincarnation, my own personal stories of how it's happened to me, answering questions from pet parent clients, sharing stories of other pets who've reincarnated. And so you can learn a ton while you're on the go, while you're engaged in your everyday life. You don't need to carve out extra time to learn how to live intuitively. You just need to incorporate intuitive sensory connection to your life as it's already unfolding in progress. Now, I want to return to our topic today and talk about a second way that a pet may give you the heads up that they're coming back to you. And that is the story of how my Petal came back to me. Now, Petal was my soul bird of 24 years, Pearl. And Pearl was a very tiny cockatiel. He never weighed more than about 80 grams. And he was gray and white, and he was very refined. He had me very well trained. We had all kinds of adventures over the 24 years together. And then one morning I woke up, and even though all the signs were there looking back, I didn't see any of them at the time. And I discovered he'd passed in the night, and I was blindsided, heartbroken. I didn't work for half the year. Now, by this time, I was an animal communicator. So you can imagine it was a difficult year for me. I really couldn't work. I couldn't function. And I was just recovering from such a blow. And I was also learning so much because Pearl was teaching me so much about my craft that I wouldn't have been able to learn in any other way. And so it has made me good at what I do, if I do say so myself. And when it happened, I was so immersed in the firestorm of grief that I almost missed it when Pearl broke through. And this was within a few hours of me finding that he had passed. I had his little body in my hands when this happened, and his voice broke through my grief firestorm. And he said to me, "Mom, I am rushing right back. I'm going to be a ladybird this time. My name will be Petal." And he showed me a picture of a pale, all yellow cockatiel. This would be called a Lutino mutation in the world of cockatiel breeding. And what's so interesting, and I didn't even catch this, there were so many clues after the fact that all lined up to let me know that this was absolutely authentic. This wasn't something I had made up in my delusions, my hysteria of grief. One of which is the fact that Petal and Pearl as names have the same number of letters, only one letter different, the R versus the T. So very interesting. It just really takes that doubting left brain mind of us and just says, park it. There's something to this. And so that's another way that our pets can let us know. Even when we're in the middle of the firestorm of grief, even when we are totally in our disbelieving left brain mind, even when we think, I'm never going to be happy again, I'm never going to smile again, life is never going to feel joyful again, it's always going to be hard from here on out. Our pets never stop trying to reach us. They don't want us to live in that space and from that place. They know there's so much more that's possible, truly. And this is where I always go back to my favorite quote from Albert Einstein, who said, there are two ways to live life. One is as if nothing is a miracle, and the other way is as if everything is a miracle. And we get to choose, and we get what we choose. So you can consider that and ask yourself, what path have I chosen? How well am I living into that? And if you choose the path of miracles, well, it also asks you to be open to the possibility that miracles happen and that miracles can happen to you. And miracles happen to me. And I certainly have a little miracle. And Petal is so opposite. In the last podcast episode, I talked about how our pets rarely show up and look and act exactly like they did in their last incarnation because that doesn't serve. So you can listen to that episode and learn more about that. But this little one, well, first of all, she's one of the largest cockatiels anyone has ever seen. She is wildly colorful. She's a girl. She's very different. She has a different voice. She has a different personality than Mr. Pearl. So it would be easy for me to say, oh, she's not really Pearl. I know she's Pearl. I know you are. I know you are. And she's just as loving. So we've got to suspend that no miracles mindset. Either nothing's a miracle or everything's a miracle. It's really, that's our choice. And sometimes when my left brain mind gears up and I think, oh my goodness, am I really, did I make all this up? She'll give me a look. She'll just give me a look like, and we're wasting brain energy on that thought again. Why? And I get it. And I snap out of it and I move on. We've got a left brain mind for a reason. When I teach animal communication, I talk about the role, very essential and necessary role of the left brain mind, but it's got its place. It's got its job, and it does not need to be tiptoeing over to the intuitive side of our inner life because it doesn't have those skills and abilities. That's not what it's there for, and that's not where it belongs. So just understand these packets of clues, and I find this is pretty consistent, whether it comes in the form of inner language, like I literally heard Pearl's voice, or it comes in the form of a dream or in some other way. I'll talk about another way that it can happen here in just a minute, but there does tend to be a little packet of clues, and it's just enough to get us going, kind of little priming of the pump, so to speak, to set our intuitive system in motion, give us something to anchor to. Otherwise, it just feels like this giant crapshoot out there. There's so many people, there's so many animals. How on earth will you ever know? So you do get something to hang your hat on, but it is all about following the clues. We need to learn, if we want to be intuitive, if we want that joyful reunion with our soul pet, we do need to be willing to become a student of intuition. Intuition means your inner teacher. Become a student and begin to follow those subtle clues. These are felt clues. These are known clues. These are not thought clues. And it can take a little doing, Again, these are small moves, little tweaks in our awareness and how we go about our everyday life. And in fact, if you are able, the next time I host an intuitive development for pet parents webinar, please do sign up for that, because I actually go into quite a bit more detail about that process in this free webinar series. So you just want to get on my email list, and then you'll be notified next time I do a webinar series, and you can jump on and be a part. So I now want to talk about yet another way that our animals can let us know that they are returning. And this is another story from my personal archive. I just spent a two-part episode that you may want to go back and check out on how my beloved rescued box turtle Bruce came back to me through pet reincarnation. But in this episode right now, I just want to focus in very closely on how Bruce let me know. And it was very interesting because I've not had the privilege of working with too terribly many cases where the pet reincarnates through a soul walk-in. What's a soul walk-in? Soul walk-in is where behind the scenes, the spirits, the embodied spirits, the souls of the animals work out to where one soul who's occupying the body exits, goes elsewhere, back to spirit, into another body, and a new soul walks in and inhabits that body. And that's exactly what happened to me with my beloved box turtle Bruce and my young box turtle Io. And what happened was so surprising. And I don't know that it always has to unfold exactly like this. This is breaking news. So I'm sharing it as I'm learning it. And I'm always learning new things. And rest assured that as I learn new details about all the ways that pet reincarnation can work, I will be sharing them here, and you will be the first to hear about them. But in this particular case, I hadn't checked in with Bruce in a while. Bruce had escaped during a period of my life when my father had just passed and my mother had been involved in a really horrific freak accident. And I was very much engaged in helping my family. And Bruce escaped, and I wasn't able to do the kind of search for him that would have helped me really recover him. So that remained like an open wound in my heart. I never really learned what happened to him. I did communicate with him. I was an animal communicator in training by that time. And so I did communicate with him. And I also hired communicators to help me communicate with him. And he let me know he wanted to be free. And there were a whole host of reasons for that. But it never was resolved. I didn't know where he was. I would check in with him periodically. I would remind him how to stay safe, how to stay away from humans, just make sure he was okay. But it had been some time, and I was busy building my business. I was busy living my life, and I hadn't checked in with him in a while. And I had gone to Alaska to visit a couple of girlfriends of mine, and I was really excited about this trip. But when I came home, for some reason, I got really, really, really sick. And I was sick for quite a few weeks. And I spent a lot of time just lying in bed. And one night I reached out to Bruce and I just wanted to check in with him. I just had this moment where I just had some time and I just wanted to check in with him. And he informed me that he had passed. And as if I wasn't already feeling awful enough. And he said, oh, Mom, but don't worry. I lived the best life and it's okay. And I met a lady turtle and I made eggs and I passed on my DNA and I was able to live my wild life the way I never could have if I hadn't spent time with you first. And that's a whole other story. Hearing from him, it gave me a sense of peace and closure. And when I woke up the next morning, somehow, inexplicably, I didn't feel as sick. I felt better. And I felt better enough that I could go outside and sit with my now 3-year-old box turtle, Io, who really hadn't developed much of a personality. I had been trying. I'd been working with him. I didn't even know he was a boy yet. I wasn't sure if Io was a girl or a boy. You don't find these things out in box turtles until they get a little older and a little bigger. So I didn't even know what gender Io was. And I didn't really seem fond of me, even though I had been a constant presence in his life since he was 7 months old. He just wasn't into me. And he would run away when he would see me. But when I went outside to sit in the sun. I decided I would check on Io, and I had been trying to be unobtrusive because he didn't really seem to be comfortable in my presence. And so I was trying not to handle him too much or do anything to cause him fear. And it was like, who are you and what have you done with Io? Io was so friendly. He ran up to me. It became quite clear in the next few days that he had developed enough that he was a boy. And I got visual proof of that in the PG show, so I'll spare you the details. But he was a boy and he was acting just like my Bruce. And I was like, okay, am I just dreaming this? Is this really happening? And it's been a few months now, and I can say with absolute confidence and clarity, this is my Bruce back. It was so uncanny. So, that again is to say, sometimes our pets let us know because they need to alter our state a little bit. I think just because of the nature of the unresolved grief I had around Bruce and the fact that I hadn't checked in with him in a while and what was going on with Io, and that I was really investing a lot of time helping other pet parents with their reincarnated pets and just with their pets in general, I was neglecting the home front a little bit and definitely neglecting my health a little bit. And it took me refocusing my attention on Bruce to notice what was unfolding right under my nose. And it took shifting my mindset and being so sick. I wouldn't necessarily say that you've got to be sick in order for your pet to get your attention and let you know, but that's just what worked. I was sick, the serendipity of it, I'm sure, shifting my mindset and showing me a miracle. So, again, with that, I chose the path of miracles. Either nothing's a miracle or everything's a miracle. Well, this has been a bona fide miracle. I never thought I would be able to be with Bruce again. He just needed to shift my mindset, open me up to a new possibility. I really believe that my mind was blocking it. I didn't think anything like this could ever transpire. And I know how long box turtles can live. It never crossed my mind that he might transition. It never crossed my mind that he might come back into Io. So it's about sometimes getting our mind out of the way. And our animals can get creative about how they do this. Yet another way a soul pet can come back. And this is so interesting because there is a parallel with human parents where we've all heard those stories, or at least I have, where a couple is trying and trying and trying to conceive. And they get to the point where they say, I throw up my hands, I give up, and they become open to adoption. They adopt a child, and lo and behold, they conceive and their family expands even further. And I have seen it where a pet parent has adopted another animal for whatever reason, either in despair, either because the animal crosses their path and simply needs a home, whatever it is. And after that animal comes into their life, then they meet their soul pet again in their new body. Either there's a walk in, like it was with me, with Bruce and Io, or it's another pet who crosses their path, and perhaps not even one that they were planning to adopt, but they recognize each other and they say, okay, this is the one I've been waiting for. And their family expands. And what's so interesting, and I'll do another episode on soul contracts here in a bit, but what's so interesting is then we're looking at soul agreements between ourselves and both animals, and we're looking at soul agreements between those animals. So that becomes another layer of intriguing exploration, and so much to be learned from these animals who serve as our partners, our empathic friends, and our teachers. So I'll leave you with this one. Yet another way that our animals can let us know that they're coming back is through animal communication. And this may be a situation where you work with someone like me who specializes in pet reincarnation. This may be something where you're able to communicate with your animal. In fact, some of the pet parent clients that I work with also have animal communication training. And so sometimes it's just a matter of inviting somebody else in who's a little bit more objective, or somebody who just gives them a little encouragement, because it can be a lonely journey, especially as we're unfolding our intuitive abilities, if we're not surrounded, if the other people that we've already populated our life with aren't perhaps on board with or interested in or believing in or comfortable with intuitive living and intuitive communication, sometimes it can be a little bit of a lonely journey having to carry that vision, carry that miracle mindedness all by ourselves. So it can be really nice to have a little company on that journey and somebody to stand in your corner and cheer you on and support you along the path to the joyful reunion. So that is another way that I can talk with your pet. We can talk with your pet together. I also offer mentoring. So we can talk with your pet together and we can get that little packet of clues to get you started on your journey and find out a little bit more about timeline and species and size and all those good things. And if you need to put in your order, and I talked more about that in the last episode, so definitely check that out. Then we can work on that as well. But that is another way that animal communication can support you by allowing your pet to share that they want to come back and give you that little starter pack of clues to get you going in your search and your manifesting and your intuitive development and all of those good things. So there you have it, a whole handful, 5 different ways that your pet can let you know that they are coming back to you. They are anticipating that joyful reunion with you through pet reincarnation. Again, if you're interested in learning more about pet reincarnation, what it is, how it happens, how it could happen for you, I've given you some tools throughout this episode, and I will also link those in the show notes below so you can easily find them. If you have enjoyed this episode, please do spend just a moment and leave us a review. It so helps us get known. It helps encourage me to keep planning these episodes for you and answering your questions. If you have a question about pet reincarnation or something else animal communication related, please do let me know that as well, because it does help me plan for the podcast season. If you are listening and you're on socials, please do tag me over on Instagram. You can find me at Love and Feathers and Shells or at Animal Love Languages. That's also my Facebook handle. I'd love to hear from you. And I look forward to welcoming you back in 2 weeks for a fresh new episode.